morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today we need to take a look at the black and white FAQ. It might not be a main set, but there's enough to talk about here that the lovely folks over at Pokegym have gone and published an FAQ for Black Bolt and White Flare. And remember, two very important things you need to know. Number one, this is an official FAQ. The folks over at Pokegym do amazing work. These are official rulings that will be used in tournaments. And number two, if you're going to play the game, you need to know the rules. So let's start off with Archeops. We have the ability here, Ancient Wing, that says that once during your turn, if it's active, you may evolve one of your opponent's evolved Pokemon by putting the highest stage evolution card of it into your opponent's hand. Well, if my opponent has an evolution Pokemon that they've put directly into play, a stage 1, stage 2, but there's no stages underneath it, what happens? Nothing. You cannot devolve it since there is nothing to devolve into. Now, Conkeldurr's got a very interesting ability that gives it an extra 40 HP for each fighting energy attached to it. Okay. What if I attach Luminous Energy, which counts as any kind of energy when it is attached? Will this give it an extra 40 HP? Yeah, of course it will. It doesn't say basic fighting, it says fighting, and once Luminous Energy is attached, it counts as a fighting energy. Totally works. Now, Meloetta is a very, very interesting Pokemon here, because it's got an ability that allows it to attack turn 1 going first. You go first, you're not really allowed to attack, but Meloetta says, don't worry, dudes, I've got you. You actually are allowed to attack. Okay. Well, if I'm going first, can I attach TM Evolution and use this to evolve my Pokemon turn 1 going first? Yes. Now, this is something I told you was going to be the case when we first saw Meloetta. It's one of the reasons I told you Meloetta was such a gosh darn good Pokemon. It's not just the attack it's got, which is fine. Things like this, it's any attack to which it has access. It has access to this attack, therefore, it absolutely can use it. It's kind of ridiculous because you can evolve up some of your Pokemon here before your opponent's even had a turn. It's one of the things that makes Meloetta so good. And yes, you can use these technical machines immediately. And obviously, like, the ruling here is for TM Evolution, but obviously it will count for any of them. Now, maybe the most important ruling, and one I did tell you when it came out over in Japan, and one with which I do not agree, the new Eelektrik is the same as the old Eelektrik. So can I use the old Eelektrik? The answer is no. The reasoning is there is a significant text difference between the two cards. The card from Black Bolt, the new one, specifies that you have to accelerate basic energy, whereas the one that came around initially in Noble Victories just lets you accelerate electric energy. Now, I am still annoyed about this ruling. I don't like this ruling, and here's the thing, right? Everyone knows this actually doesn't make a difference. Yes, technically Eelektrik doesn't say basic lightning, but if you look at all the special energy like Luminous Energy, they never provide lightning energy in the discard. They only ever provide lightning energy once they're attached. So there is a technical possibility that a special energy comes along that does count as lightning energy in the discard, and then you can accelerate it, but that never happens. Also, I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you wanted us to not use the old Eelektrik, just make Electro Ball do 60. Or make it do 40. Or make it 1 lightning, 2 colourless. Or make it 3 lightning. Make one tiny change to that attack, and it doesn't matter. They even gave it the same flavour text and then said we couldn't use the old one. I'm still not happy about this. It's on the record. I've told you all. I've now told you again. We can move on with our lives, but you all need to know I'm not terribly happy about this. Now, moving on with abilities, we've got Klinklang with Emergency Rotation. And older players will know what I mean when I say Sableye. And several of you might be thinking, hang on a second, Wassy, this is a black and white FAQ. You're telling me about the Klinklang from Stellar Crown. Explain yourself. Well, it's all to do with ignition energy, which is, of course, from Black Bolt and White Flare. Because what emergency rotation says is that you can play this from your hand as long as your opponent has got any stage 2 Pokemon in play. You can play it straight to your bench. So it's essentially a stage 2 you can play as a basic. Well, can I then attach ignition energy to count as free colourless energy and then pay for Hyper Ray in one attachment? The answer is yes. The reason is, even though it's not evolved from anything, it is an evolution Pokemon. It's got the evolves from in the top left-hand corner. I believe the term is unevolved evolution Pokemon, but as long as it's got that evolves from in the top left-hand corner, it will be an evolution Pokemon. We have a really nice ability here from Superior Regal Cheer. Attacks used by your Pokemon do 20 more damage to your opponent's active. Does it stack? Yes. The rule nowadays is very simple. If it says this attack doesn't stack, it doesn't stack. If it doesn't, then it does stack. There we go. Nice and easy. Unless it says otherwise, assume that it does. Now, Samurot's got a really nice ability. Once during a turn, you may switch your active Pokemon with one of your bench. And if you do, switch out your opponent's active to the bench. Well, if I've got more than one Samurott in play, can I use Torrential Whirlpool for each one? Yes. Yes, you can. The rule here is, if it is limited to once during your turn, it will explicitly say it. Think Pheasantipti, for instance. Pheasantipti has the text on the card. You can't choose more than one flip the script ability each turn. Otherwise, it says once during your turn, but it's once during your turn per Pokemon that has the ability. If it's a hard once, regardless of how many you've got, it will specifically say it does not stack. Moving on to attacks, we've got Durant's Bite Together, 20 damage, but if Durant's on your bench, it does 20 more. Hey, is that 20 for each Durant? No, because that's not what it says. What it says is, if Durant is on your bench, it does 20 more. Look at your bench. Are there any Durant? If so, do 20 more. If not, don't. That's all it does. Litwick's Bright Burn lets you look at the top card of your deck, and you may discard that card. What if you don't discard it? Put it back, pretend it never happened, job's a good un. That's always the case, incidentally. If you ever look at a card and it doesn't say what to do with it, it always just goes back where it came from. Now, Landorus's Earthquake does 110, but also does 10 damage to each of your bench Pokemon. What about Terra Pokemon? No. And we can fix this really easily by looking at the text on Terra Pokemon. Take Galvantula. I don't know, it was the easiest one to find when I'm recording this video. As long as this Pokemon is on your bench, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks, yours and your opponent's. So no, your Pokemon don't take bench damage from your attacks if they are Terra. Going back to Meloetta, because we've not talked about it enough yet. The Echoed Voice attack, single energy 30. During your next turn, it does 80 more. Wait, so does that mean 30, then 110, then 190, then 270? No. No, it doesn't. We've seen this on attacks for years and years and years. The bonus damage doesn't stack. So essentially, the way to read it is, during your next turn, this Pokemon's Echoed Voice attack does 80 more damage than the base 30. If you used Echoed Voice last turn, it does 110. Otherwise, it does 30, but it never does any other amount of damage, unless you've modified it with something else, of course. Now, Cofagrigus has the wonderfully named Extended Damagrigus. It lets you move all damage counters from one of your bench Pokemon to one of your opponent's Pokemon. Cool. What if I use this to move damage from one of my bench Pokemon to my opponent's Antique Cover Fossil with the Protect Cover ability? The Protect Cover ability says, prevent all effective attacks used by your opponent's Pokemon done to this Pokemon. Well, your bench Pokemon would remove the damage because there's nothing blocking that, and then they would disappear. You are allowed to move the damage off, but you cannot move the damage onto the fossil so it disappears. You would not be able to move the damage from something with this ability. That would be blocked. There's nothing blocking you moving the damage, but there is something blocking you moving the damage to the fossil, so you don't. My boy Ducklett actually makes it into the FAQ, and I'm delighted about this. Firefighting lets you discard a fire energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. Well, can I discard a prism energy from my opponent's active? Yeah. Because when it's attached, it counts as a fire energy. We talked about this, ergo it can be targeted. Gale Thrust does 30 damage, but if it moved from the bench to the active, it does 90 more. Hey, what if you had a Pokemon KO'd, and then KO came up to replace it? Do you get the extra 90? No. We've seen this rolling a bunch with these kind of Pokemon. It doesn't actually move up during your turn, it moves up between turns, so it doesn't satisfy the attack. Roggenroller's got Harden. During your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage done if it is 40 or less. Well, if my opponent switches it to the bench, does this still work? Nah, effects like this are reset when you hit the bench. Sorry about that. Is this calculated before or after weakness? Weakness and resistance are factored in. So if a grass Pokemon does 30 damage, it would actually do 60 for weakness, and Harden would not prevent it. But if it does 20, doubled up for 40, then it would prevent it. Now, Maractus often has interesting attacks. We have one here. We've got the rather lovely named Lively Needles, 20 damage, but if this Pokemon was healed this turn, this attack does 100 more damage. Okay. Well, what if it's got no damage on, but I played Fennel this turn? Do I get to do the extra 100 damage? No. It doesn't matter if you've played a card that could have healed it if it had damage. It doesn't have damage. And I know Fennel heals 40 from each of your Pokemon, but if you had damage on there, that would be fine. If you don't have damage on there, nothing gets healed, and you don't get the extra damage. Nice try, though. People might try this. Tell them it doesn't work. Stoutland's got a lovely new attack, Odor Sleuth. This one lets you flip 3 coins and put a number of cards up to the number of heads from your discard pile into your hand. Well, what if I get some heads? Can I take no cards back from my discard? Nah. If you can, you've got to take at least one. Terrakion's back with a Retaliate attack, 50 damage, but if any of your Pokemon were knocked out by damage from an attack during your opponent's last turn, you do an extra 80 damage. Well, if my opponent KOs my active non-Pokemon EX with a Legacy energy attached, such that they take no prize cards, do I still get the extra damage? Yeah. It doesn't say if your opponent took a prize card last turn. It says if your opponent KO'd one of your Pokemon. So even if there's a Legacy energy so that your opponent takes no prizes, they still got a KO, so you still get the extra damage. Now, Fro has the appropriately named shoulder, Fro. 2 energy, 120, but it does 30 less for each energy in your opponent's active Pokemon's retreat cost. Well, if it has an air balloon attached, what happens then? It is reduced. So if they've got a retreat cost of 3 with an air balloon, then it's only reduced by 30. Because they only have a retreat cost of 1. It's not the printed retreat cost. It is what the retreat cost functionally is when you use the attack. If it is increased or reduced by various cards, then that will be factored in when you're looking to see how much damage you do. And then finally, a couple quick rulings about trainer cards. Hilda, can you search out a special energy with Hilda? Of course you can. Hilda says, search your deck for an evolution Pokemon and an energy card. Doesn't say basic energy, Therefore, you can search for whatever energy you like. If it doesn't specify, then you can get anything. End plan lets you move up to 2 energy from your bench Pokemon to your active. Well, can I move 2 energy cards that provide more than 1 energy each? Yes, you can. And it's a tiny bit awkward, but essentially the way it works is, let's say you've got 2 ignition energy for some reason on the board. Well, you move 1 of the energy in each of the ignition energy, and it works quite nicely. You're essentially choosing 1 energy from each of the cards. It would let you move them. Bit weird, but totally works. And there we go. Shout out once again to the lovely folks over at PokeGym for providing the FAQ. It is official. You do need to know it, but I've helped you out now. You do know it. So we can move on with our day. And now I want to know what you think about all of these rulings. So let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice. And do remember the new YouTube algorithm likes and comments mean a lot more than they did before. So if you would be kind enough to leave a like or a comment, I would really appreciate it. And we need to finish as we always do, giving a shout out to one of our lovely Patreons over at patreon.com/PTCG Radio. So massive shout out here to the lovely Ray of Light, who's been a support of ours for a long time now and seems to be a very lovely person. So shout out to them for the support and the loveliness. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.